I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Representative Himes, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Alex.
You co-signed that letter. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, you know, the contest in Washington right now is between, I think, a smaller number of senators and congresspeople who are looking to remain in their ideological corners and say, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, this is off the table. And actually, what I would tell you is probably a majority of the Congress who says, you know what, this is a critical moment for the country. We've been ready to do something big and great here to get our country's fiscal stability in order, and we're willing to compromise and negotiate with the other side. And, you know, in a world where everybody thinks that partisanship reigns in Washington, D.C., this letter last week took 40 Republicans and 60 Democrats in the House all saying, let's work together for the big deal.
That all makes sense, but you're looking at 12 people who really have the power in their hands at this point. Do you have any idea of the reception to your $4 trillion proposal?
Well, you know, I happen to know a number of the members of the Supercommittee, and I know that, you know, a substantial number of them are interested also in doing, you know, the $4 trillion number is not made up. It's the number that the economists tell us we need to find in deficit reduction over the next 10 years to stabilize our debt and our deficit. So that has to be the target, or we'll be doing this again in a year or two. And I think those guys realize that. But remember, Alex, it's not just the Supercommittee. They need to produce legislation, but that legislation then needs to pass the House and the Senate with majorities. So it's a two-step process. Okay.
Until this week, the Supercommittee had pretty much refused to say what was happening behind closed doors. And then this week, House Speaker John Boehner said the mood is one of nervousness. How about you? What are your expectations? And do you think the committee is going to meet this November 23rd deadline? Because it's coming quick.
Well, they have to meet that November 23rd deadline, or, you know, these cuts, these automatic cuts known as sequestrations kick in. Now, there's already, in what has to be one of the most craven things I have seen in the last 3 years in the Congress, a move to do away with those automatic cuts, which, yes, are tough and hard and ugly, but they are there to get the Supercommittee to do something better. So, you know, people are already looking for the trapdoor, to create the trapdoor. Look, the reality is we should stand up and deal with this problem, not just the $1.2 trillion, which, by the way, I do think the Supercommittee can do. I think the larger question is can they do the whole enchilada? Can they get us to that $4 trillion number? Honestly, that's a lot harder to do in the time that they have left.
Yeah, 11 days. That's not a lot of time, really, to get this thing done. High politics surrounding this debt decision as well, of course. Nothing's without politics in Washington. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said this week, quote, I'm now convinced that the president actually believes he would be benefited by the committee not succeeding because success would step on his storyline that we can't do anything on a bipartisan basis. What's your reaction to that?
You know, for a politician to say to another politician, or to say publicly that this individual wants to put his personal interests ahead of the interests of the country, is pretty tough words, especially from a guy, by the way, Mitch McConnell himself, saying that his chief objective in the last couple of years was to make sure this was a one-term president. So look, Mitch McConnell is sitting in his political world, and my hope is that he steps up and recognizes how very important it is that this Supercommittee succeed. Let's forget about the interests of our own re-election and get this job done for the American people.
Are you surprised by some of the Republicans who signed? I mean, of those on that list, you've got Ron Paul and others.
You know, I was very surprised. I must tell you, you know, I sort of expected those 100 names to live, you know, kind of where I feel like I live in the Congress, which is in that, you know, tenuous, moderate center. But the reality is that we had, you know, Peter Welch from the Progressive Caucus. We had people who I think of as very, very conservative people, like Congresswoman Lummis of Wyoming. So you had people across the ideological spectrum, from right to left, saying, I'm willing to negotiate. I'm willing to be uncomfortable to solve this huge problem. And I think that's a terrific thing.
So that makes you optimistic?
Well, yeah, again, I'm optimistic that they can get at least the $1.2 trillion done by November 23rd. I am hopeful, but I'm not quite sure I'm willing to use the word optimistic around the $4 trillion deal.
Okay, well, we'll hold you to that then. Thank you very much. From Connecticut, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes. Thank you.
Thank you.